about 1,500 kilometres north of Perth. It falls within the boundaries of the Ngarluma people. The bed of the Harding River runs through the town, and the surrounding countryside, with its rocky escarpments, grassy plains, and ochre tones, has a beauty unique to the Pilbara region. In 1983, the death of 16-year-old John Peter Patt in a Roebourne police lockup became the catalyst for the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody and brought the public's attention to the paucity of amenities in Roebourne and the conditions in the town. In 1991, in his report about John Patt's death, Commissioner Elliot Johnston QC outlined the devastation of Aboriginal culture in the area brought on by the expansion of the pastoral industry from the 1860s, large-scale mining from the 1960s, the impact of alcohol, and the dislocation of people from the Roebourne Reserve to a state housing commission project known as the Village. Almost 20 years later, a report by the Department of Indigenous Affairs identified continuing social issues relating to alcohol abuse, poverty, and violence in Roebourne. The report noted consistent community feedback that there was significant overcrowding in public housing, which was contributing to family violence. In August 2011, the President of the WA Police Union wrote to the Minister for Housing, the Honourable Troy Buswell, outlining long-standing concerns about the standard and location of existing police housing. Police officers reported being subjected to harassment, vandalism, and antisocial behaviour in and around their homes, and indicated they would leave Roebourne if a solution could not be reached. The President urged the state government to act swiftly. He warned, "There will be no police officers in Roebourne to police the town." By the end of that year, the Department of Housing had bought 2 blocks of vacant land on Hampton Street, on the slopes of Mount Welcome. After long delays, a purpose-built housing complex for police and their families finally opened in July 2014. The person who signed the contract on behalf of the Department of Housing was Mr. Paul White. There was more to the story than what had first appeared to be a standard land acquisition by a government department to build government housing. The Commission's examinations over the next 3 days will lift the curtain on the saga of the Roebourne Police Housing Complex and ask significant questions about what happened behind the scenes. Was the land purchased solely for the benefit of the Roebourne community, or was it purchased at a hugely inflated price for the benefit of Mr. White's gambling associates? In January 2011, a real estate agent contacted the department to advise that the Hampton Street lots were on the market. The department did not act. Instead, a couple from Melbourne, Mr. Robert Atone and his wife, bought the lots. The Atones paid $440,000 for the lots in April 2011. They owned the lots for just over 7 months, and in that time made no improvements to them. The lots were not connected to essential water, electricity or sewage services. In November, the Atones sold the Hampton Street lots to the department for $700,000 under a contract that required further payments from the department to the Atones once the department had developed the lots. By January 2013, the Atones had received almost $1.3 million from the Department of Housing for the sale of the Hampton Street lots in a deal brokered by Mr. Paul White. Who was Mr. Robert Atone? Was he simply an astute investor who profited from a brief ownership of 2 vacant lots of land on which he'd made no improvements? Or did Mr. Atone buy the Hampton Street lots as part of a corrupt scheme in which government funds were deliberately overspent for the personal benefit of certain individuals? Mr. Robert Atone, a smash repairer in Melbourne, was friends with Mr. Graham Michelle. Mr. Graham Michelle was friends with Mr. Paul White. As well as being Mr. White's friend, Mr. Michelle was also Mr. White's bookie. For years, Mr. Michelle placed bets allegedly worth millions of dollars for Mr. White on betting accounts around Australia. In the years in which the department bought the Hampton Street lots and developed the police housing complex, the Commission's investigation has uncovered hundreds of thousands of dollars moving between the bank accounts controlled by Mr. White, Mr. Michelle, and Mr. Atone. The movement of these massive sums of money between Mr. White, Mr. Michelle, and Mr. Atone at the time when Mr. White acted on behalf of the Department of Housing in purchasing land from Mr. Atone raises serious questions which the Commission will explore in these examinations. Over the next 3 days, witnesses will give evidence about the steps taken and decisions made when the Hampton Street lots were bought and developed for police housing in Roebourne. The Commission will consider whether there was adequate governance, transparency, and accountability when public money was spent. The Commission will scrutinise whether public officers disclosed confidential information they obtained by virtue of their positions. Beginning with the first witness, Mr. Graham Michelle, the examinations will shed light on the relationships between the key parties in the Hampton Street transactions. More broadly, the Commission's investigation has raised issues about the culture within the Department of Housing at the time. In private examinations before the Commission, witnesses described Mr. White as being entrepreneurial and creative. He seemed to produce results. The Commission will explore whether a desire to cut red tape and bureaucracy, together with a reluctance to report suspected misconduct, may allow corruption to flourish because proper procedures and safeguards are disregarded. Cultural issues are not unique to particular agencies, and in that respect, there may be lessons to be gleaned by other departments in the public sector. The Roebourne Police Housing Complex was a much-needed solution to a volatile situation in the town, when the police were threatening to leave because of problems with their housing. Around that time, the state government had committed significant funding to the Pilbara region, having launched its Pilbara City Blueprint in 2009. The government wanted to transform the region by creating modern, higher density centres supported by all the services and facilities enjoyed in other Australian cities. In 2011, the Housing Authority had embarked on its Roebourne Rejuvenation Project, which involved demolishing or refurbishing existing social housing and constructing new housing for residents as well as employees of government and non-government agencies. The community of Roebourne deserved the funding and infrastructure upgrades that was promised to it. The government should be able to trust that its public servants, particularly those in senior positions, will carry out their duties ethically and for the benefit of the people of Western Australia. The state paid a hefty price for the Roebourne Police Housing Complex. Almost a decade later, we hope the experience was not in vain and that Roebourne can serve as a clarion call to vigilance across the public sector.
Thank you, Ms. Luke.